Earlier this month, a fire swept through a refugee camp in southern Bangladesh. Officials say it burned for almost 3 hours before it was eventually quenched. And when the ashes settled, hundreds of shelters had been destroyed. About 7,000 Rohingya refugees who lived in the camp had been left homeless. Most of the Rohingyas who live in camps across Bangladesh have been there since 2017, when nearly 1 million of them fled a brutal military crackdown in their home country, Myanmar. Race Tingmung works with a group of volunteers who run educational programs in the camps. He's also the founder and board chair of the Rohingya Human Rights Network. We reached him this afternoon. Rise, hello there.
Hi, Alan. It's
now been more than a week since the fire broke out. What are the volunteers in the camp saying to you now about the effect that fire had on people who live there?
The effect is devastating, and it's nothing new. This kind of fire is very frequent in the camps. It has happened last year. It has happened the year before. A lot of people, doubt that this is an act of arson, and that's very likely. However, investigations are still yet to reveal what exactly is the cause of it.
What are the theories about the fire? I mean, the arson, that idea has been floated. Are there other conditions in the camp that are leading to these fires?
Absolutely. Whenever I go to the camps, actually I was in the camps last October, not too long before the fire actually broke out. And previously also I try and go every couple of years. I've lived inside the camps actually, and the conditions over there, the crowdedness is so akin and so susceptible, makes the conditions so susceptible to fire that it's not unlikely that any kind of a little mishap would lead to fire. When you wake up in the morning, it's very hard actually to even fall asleep. But when you wake up, there's like this thick smog, of smoke that you're breathing in. If there's any kind of cooking, let it be for dinner, breakfast, whatever, all of that. That smog, that whatever comes out, is collected in these little, crowded huts that are just one adjacent to another. So any kind of mishap can lead to a fire very easily.
The Bangladeshi officials were saying how those who lost their homes are being cared for with food and temporary shelter. I mean, keeping in mind the temporary shelter for people who are already in a shelter, already in a refugee camp. How much support would you say is actually available for the refugees who now need to rebuild?
Well, the support has been dwindling for the last few years, and that's a very well-known fact. As a matter of fact, UNHCR was, raising alarms of how, rations have cut down for individual from $12 per individual per month down to $8 per individual per month, which is just like 27 cents per individual per day. You just get like a bag of rice and a small bag of lentils, for 2 weeks. And if you're out, then you're gone. You survive on barely nothing until your next bag of rations come in. So funding is very, very poor. There has been just a little bit of support recently from the UK and the EU back in December. But nevertheless, the total funding situation is very bleak. And so when you're saying that there are temporary shelters, these are temporary over the temporary. You're looking at just some makeshift with bamboo sticks and some tarps that they would have to have this temporary shelters. And then, in a matter of 6 months to 8 months, however long it takes for them to acquire sufficient funding to build the other temporary shelters, which are made up of bamboo and mud, that's when they will reconstruct the homes for the nearly 1,000 shelters that have been burned, fully or partially.
And for Extreme Poverty Project, I should explain that's your organization, Extreme Poverty Projects. When you're trying to help out now, and I know yours is a smaller organization, especially compared to the need that exists, what do you find you are able to do, and what do you find you cannot do?
Well, we cannot certainly go out and build shelters. That's not in our mandate, and it's not also in our budget. It's actually UNHCR's mandate. But what we can do is we collect some perishables and some immediate supplies, from food to blankets to clothing, for those who have lost everything, and then just a few hundred families is what we can support. The impact is massive with our limited budget. We focus primarily on education and vocational training, and amongst the structures, the the shelters that were destroyed, there are about 15 of them that were Rohingya-led schools, like community schools. Schools is the word that we utilize. It's usually these little classrooms that operate as schools, because education, for our viewers who do not know, it's banned in the refugee camps. We're not allowed to have, the government of Bangladesh does not allow formal education. So these informal education centers that have been burned down, our plan is to resupply them, help them reestablish themselves once the shelters are able to be brought back.
That reestablishment, how does that process begin?
So first of all, they need to have those shelters, at least the mud shelters, to be rebuilt, which will take some time from UNHCR. But once they are built, now it's up to the community members who are running the schools to furnish themselves with books, supplies, whiteboards. They're very basic, requirements that we're looking at. Nothing sophisticated as the schools that we have here in Canada or even elsewhere, let's say even in India or the rest of Bangladesh. These are just basic classrooms with books and whiteboards and, a chair for the teachers. Kids sit on the ground, actually, and they've got little stools so that their books are a little bit raised and they're not stooping on the ground when they're studying. But all of these also require funding, and it's up to the community members to come up with that. And we assist those classrooms that are run by community members to procure these equipments, and that's where our role comes in.
I mean, at the same time, we should talk about here what the Rohingya refugees have been experiencing in Indonesia. At the end of December, Associated Press was reporting about 100 students who physically attacked dozens of Rohingya refugees. They tried to kick them out of a temporary shelter. Human Rights Watch was saying there are also cases where residents have tried to stop boats of Rohingya refugees from reaching the shore. When we dig deeper there, what is behind those sentiments, the desire to keep the boats off the shore, to kick people out of their shelter?
This was a very, very shocking development, actually. The entire community, both the diaspora as well as people, of course, in Myanmar, we were shocked at how this response was. And coming from Indonesia, that has been welcoming so far, it was a very, very, very shocking moment. So we believe that most of it comes from social media misinformation that has spread very widely within Indonesia as well as Malaysia. It has happened before in Malaysia in 2021 specifically, and also a little bit in 2022, because most of the boats, the human trafficking boats, when they leave Arakan, northwestern Myanmar, and the refugee camps, they try and target going to Malaysia. Malaysia is where the larger diaspora is. But Malaysian people and the Malaysian government, they're not very keen on welcoming refugees. And so back in 2021, 2022, there was an uproar in the Malaysian, communities where the boats dock to prevent these boats from docking. And then subsequently, there has been, coordinated efforts to not allow the boats to come in, which is why the boats are now taking a route to go further down south and dock in Aceh. I was actually in Aceh, in the province of Aceh in Indonesia, next to Sumatra. And I was in Aceh just back in 2022. And I visited those villages where the boats precisely dock. And we actually run some small projects there as well. So the people are very welcoming. The fishermen, they have a law of the seas, just like how the modern, sea laws require you to, any boat that is in distress in the sea, you are required to go and help them. They've got similar traditional laws that the fishermen follow. But shockingly, these laws have been overturned, and they are contravening international seawater laws. But this is what's happening based on people's widespread sentiments. It's very shocking.
That misinformation campaign, though, as you put it, where is that coming from?
That's a very big question to ourselves as well, because Indonesia so far has been a very supportive group of people, but it could very well come from political parties or hate groups that utilize hate, for example, in order to strengthen their agenda. Nationalistic parties and nationalistic groups that do not want foreigners or not want any kind of money or resources going to a foreign group of people, let it be people who are coming from the seas, who are in need of help, etc. So the kind of talk, misinformation that goes on in these social forums is that the Rohingya are coming and taking away our resources. They would take away the aid money. There's poverty in Indonesia as well, and so the misinformation is that Rohingya are going to take away that aid money, which is supposed to come to Indonesia. And the Rohingya are going to take away our jobs, low-paying jobs, and even undercut them to take even lower pay, and then, and undercut us. So stuff like that, and that's how it spreads. And some of them are even saying they bring diseases. We don't want those diseases. They bring bad influence to our kids. We don't want those influences to our kids. It's very unfortunate. It's our life.
Human Rights Watch has called on the Indonesian government to protect the Rohingya refugees arriving there. In terms of what you've seen authorities do to prevent those kinds of attacks and respond to them, what do you want to see done on that front?
You see, as a Rohingya activist, I would really, at the core of all of this, I would really want to see Myanmar rectify its problems. We are Myanmar citizens. We are originally from Burma. We are supposed to have the right to go back with dignity and protection as citizens of Myanmar. But that's not happening anytime soon because of the entire turmoil that's in Myanmar at the moment. You've got the military government that is in command with factions of civilians that have picked up arms and ethnic minorities that have picked up arms to fight the government and have these different portions. There's chaos everywhere. And so there is really little hope for us to go back to our own homelands in peace and protection. So when that is not happening, at least the next thing that could happen, or that I would like to see happen, is the ASEAN government, the neighboring region, which starting from Thailand to Malaysia to Indonesia, Philippines a little bit to the east, but all the other regional governments should do their part at least to protect or say something, for vulnerable populations like the Rohingya, as well as other ethnic minorities that are being chased away from Myanmar. Unfortunately, not a lot of them speak up. They are all interested in their economic affairs, and human rights just falls to the sides. And so until those things are addressed, there's not going to be much progress, unfortunately, but we have to do our best.
Ras Tingmung, thanks very much for being with us.
Thank you very much, Alan. Always a pleasure.
Ras Tingmung is founder and board chair of the Rohingya Human Rights Network.